Hello and welcome to the video accompanying our second paper of 2020 for Exploring Happiness. This paper is quite a long one and it's really detailed and it's super interesting, even to me who's not an economist. I find it really insightful. Elliot collaborated with a fellow economist called Max, who unfortunately can't be here to discuss the paper with us today because he's somewhere over the Atlantic flying between Canada and London at the moment. But we thank Max a lot for his input into this paper.
Yes, and I'm going to explain some of the key points that we've tried to put out during the paper. So the paper's about how we should respond, or how the UK government should consider responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and the way that it's impacted both our economy but also people's well-being and the main things we should think about there. So the paper is split into four sections. In the first section we explain what have been the economic effects from COVID-19 on the UK economy so far. And just to be clear, the general themes in the paper could be paralleled to other advanced economies as well. We primarily focus on the UK, but policy solutions and what we suggest could also be used for other advanced economies. But to go back to section one, we explained that the main way that COVID-19 has impacted the economy is through quite a severe income shock that's affected both households and businesses. Economic activities more or less stopped in large sectors of the economy. So this has meant that we've seen the government schemes come into action on a larger scale than we've perhaps seen during our lifetimes anyway. And these are supporting households through the furlough scheme and supporting businesses through the coronavirus business interruption loan schemes and stuff like this. So this is keeping the economy afloat at the moment. And then in section two, we focus on measures of well-being. The ONS publish measures of well-being in the UK and how they performed during the pandemic. And we show that there's been a rapid decline alongside the economic variables. There's been a rapid decline in measures of well-being too, which is not a huge surprise given the policies of lockdown. And we've seen a lot of people having to be isolated, less socialising, and at the same time measures of anxiety have increased rapidly. There's a huge amount of uncertainty with how the pandemic and how that might affect people's lives, and not only your life but potentially lives of people you care about too. So this is completely understandable, but it is useful to see that it's coming through in the data as well. Section 3, we kind of outline what are we expecting in terms of the economic effects going forward, and our main message is that once the government schemes have ended, it's going to be particularly interesting and important to understand the long-term scarring impacts on the economy will be impacted by whether or not things can return to normal quickly, or if we remain in a kind of social distancing world whereby economic activity is much lower than before, and people act in a more precautionary way. Maybe those that have been saving during the pandemic continue to save, then businesses won't receive the same amount of revenues as before. They're likely to choose to lay off some of their workers if they're not acting at the level of capacity that they were before the pandemic. And these sorts of things, if they continue for a long amount of time, we show in the paper that there's a lot of UK businesses that really don't have huge amounts of cash reserves, and they'll be burning through those if they're not receiving the revenues that they had before, and we'll start to see defaults, and these things could get much worse. So we'll get onto it in a moment. In the policy recommendations, we really focus on ways to prevent that from happening. And the other thing I've mentioned in section 3 is we speak about the fact that there's been huge differences between winners and losers during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're seeing that those that are able to continue working from home, particularly higher earners, they've been able to save during the pandemic because there's less opportunities to spend, and those that are lower earners are more likely to have been furloughed or made unemployed. saying, you know, proportion of young people are more likely to have been made unemployed, and there's lots of reasons to think even before the pandemic they were starting on maybe in a more difficult time than previous generations, so it's potentially being exacerbated by this crisis. People with fewer qualifications are more likely to be impacted by the crisis, as well as those on what we call atypical work contracts, so zero-hour work contracts, easier for these sorts of people to have been made unemployed during this time. So these are the groups in society that be very important for the government to focus their support even after the government schemes have ended, and ways in which they could be included in the policies that form the recovery period. And that's precisely what the final section focuses on. We have 5 key policy solutions, and the overarching goal is consistent with the goal that we have for exploring happiness in general, which is increasing well-being in a sustainable way. And it's precisely the sustainability that we focus on in the policy solutions that we include. So the first of these is less an individual policy solution and more kind of a theme for the others. And that is climate change at the centre of the response. We do go into some detail about the fact that we think it's incredibly important that the UK government continues to spend public money in the recovery of the crisis, and alongside that puts in place a robust climate change carbon tax policy, and we've included in a previous paper on climate change about why we think it's particularly important that these things are done together. And it's even more important given the COVID-19 pandemic at this point in time, because it offers a greater opportunity for public spending, because typical research has shown that public spending during recessions has a greater, what we call in an economist world, fiscal multipliers. And what this really means is that for every pound spent by the government, the knock-on effect is larger during a crisis. And it's quite easy to understand why, because more people have been made unemployed, so the benefit that public money will have is greater during these more difficult times than maybe not so necessary during normal times. So this offers a great chance for the government to redirect our economy to be more focused towards the transition of having a low carbon economy. And the benefits of that in the long term are huge, because it could mean that a future shock comes, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have a much more skilled workforce, and we're seeing that those with less skills are the ones that are more likely to be furloughed and unemployed. So we might be more protected in the future to something like this, and that should be where we're aiming. And secondly, this links with the second policy recommendation, which is focused on the labour market. So we're proposing a centralised job retraining and job matching or searching scheme that's run by the government. So just to mention, because this links in with the other policy recommendations too, we're looking for policies that can look to focus towards the structural transformation of the economy. And what I mean by that is looking to support industries that are emerging or growing, and looking to be industries that are probably going to be industries that will last in the UK economy for some time. High skilled, modern tech industries being some of the main ones, and moving labour and capital away from declining industries. So as we said before, there's large amounts of the workforce that have been made unemployed. Unfortunately, for this policy, large amounts of them are ones that could really benefit from job retraining. So young workers, those on low incomes, those with fewer qualifications, if they were to receive a job retraining focused towards something that could support the transition towards a low carbon economy, they could become much more productive workers in the economy, and we can look to, through this scheme, match workers better between kind of firms and their employees. And why is this so important? Well, what we found is that following recessions, the quality of matches between workers and firms tends to decline. So people are made unemployed, and often they'll look to find whatever job they can to boost their income, and it might not necessarily be where their skills are best being used. So our policy is about the government continuing to provide income support that those who have been unemployed, retraining them, giving them security that they can do so without feeling rushed back into the labour market. And in the long run, boosting their skills and adding to the level of productivity in the economy alongside that. So this is all grouped into this, and that can increase the match between workers and firms, and that's so important because then in downturns it's less likely that these workers will be made unemployed. They will become much more important to the firm, these sorts of things. So that's that policy solution. Number 3 is all about business and the tough decisions that the government's going to have to make in the aftermath of this recession. And that is because there's going to be a section of the business community whereby the business loan schemes will not be enough, and they'll need further support, not in the forms of loans, but in the forms of equity bailouts. And the government, they've made some small announcements about the Project Birch plan, which is the bailout scheme. And they've said that they'll only provide bailouts for firms that have exhausted all other options and also play a significant role in the economy too. So we thought that they should go a little bit further with this, and they should only support firms that are emerging or important for the UK economy, or growing towards this goal of a low carbon economy and important industries. So if they're in a declining industry, unfortunately we feel that they should not be bailed out, because it would be moving the economy in the wrong direction in this sense. They should then use the workers from that firm to take them towards industries that are expanding, and that will help to boost productivity in the economy. Unless, and the only caveat we do make, is if this particular firm plays an essential role in the economy, and by not bailing them out, then they would cause increased disruption to financial stability. And lastly, we just wanted to mention, we included in the paper, we've already seen a couple of conditional bailouts whereby Lufthansa and Air France, the 2 airlines, have been bailed out on the condition that they follow climate change objectives. With a bailout, the government becomes essentially a shareholder within the business, and we think the UK government should do the same. So where they have provided bailouts, particularly in the airline industry, given the emissions that they produce, they should provide extra support. They should produce policies that are consistent with the climate change objectives. The 4th policy is boosting the infrastructure of the regions outside of London, and doing so consistent with the government's green objectives. So we found that infrastructure spending is particularly labour intensive, so this should lead to the creation of a large amount of jobs. So through the job retraining scheme, they could be linked up with these infrastructure spending projects. And the whole goal here is looking to improve the quality of transport links between cities outside of London, so that we found in previous research, or other researchers have found, that even when the financial opportunities to move to another city are there, some people don't move, and we think it's probably because of either ties to that place they are, or their family and stuff like this. And by improving the quality of transport between cities and doing so on a green basis, this could decrease the likelihood that people won't move to cities. And the important thing is that there's a huge magnet of young workers to move towards London. These are young, highly skilled workers, and they all come to London because that's where the opportunities are. And really what we need to do is to invest in the quality of transport in these cities outside of London, not just transport, also the quality of housing, making sure these areas have had the suitable upgrade that then businesses will look to move there, and therefore workers will look to move there, and that will facilitate the levelling up agenda that the government are looking towards. And now this is all a bit serious. The 5th policy solution is what we call harbouring the rainbow effect. So the kind of silver lining in the ONS wellbeing surveys is that people have become kinder or perceptions are that people have become kinder. There's a greater unity during the pandemic. Communities have come together, helping elderly with their shopping, etc. And as with our other policies, we're looking to kind of build on good things that have happened and stop and provide intervention where bad things have happened as a general theme. And this is one where we should be looking to build on this. So we think that the government should be sending more funding to localised communities, and they can use this in a range of ways that they see fit to continue to increase the level of kind of community socialising, because this is something that has been, based on evidence, has been declining for some time in the UK. The level of, how well do you know your neighbour? We went for drinks with our neighbours during the pandemic and probably wouldn't have done without it. So that's been one positive that's come out of all of this, and it's looking to build on that. And the second part of this is that we've mentioned about the fact that we include it in the paper that we think that with a big positive response on the economy, this will help to support well-being for large amounts of people. And we do include in the conclusion, you may think that some of these policies aren't necessarily focused towards well-being, but we do include, explain why increased labour policy support will help people because they'll have more purpose in their work. That helps for well-being. But please read the conclusion, you'll see all the links there. What we want to touch on is that there will be larger parts of the UK where their mental health has been affected by the pandemic. And even prior to the pandemic, we did a paper on mental health in the UK economy. This was a big area that we were calling for investment to support people, because it can lead to greater productivity of workers. Just boosting well-being should be an overall target of the government anyway. And coming out of this pandemic, people are likely to have long-run effects because of what's happened. And we feel that it's incredibly important for the government to increase spending in localised communities for mental health after this pandemic to boost well-being in a sustainable way as per our objective. Now, you may be the one, we include a box note at the end to answer this one nagging question that many of you may have, which is, it's all good and well saying that you're going to spend loads of money, but how is that going to be sustainable in the long run? Well, we include a box note that explains that for two main reasons, debt sustainability can still be achieved whilst increasing public spending during this time. The first of these is that interest rates are extremely low, so it's cheap for the government to increase government spending at a large amount. And second of these is that we found from the previous financial crisis, where the government put in place large amounts of austerity policies, and we saw it in other governments as well, that this didn't lead to a strong recovery afterwards, and in fact the public debt ratio has remained in the UK broadly where it was prior to the crisis, or at least after the crisis anyway, staying around 80% of GDP. So it's not been particularly successful at declining the debt, and importantly, that we feel that is because the amount of growth in the economy has not been so strong. So a public debt ratio always looks at the amount of debt versus the size of the economy. And we think this time around it should be focused on increasing the size of the economy, increasing the level of productivity, and supporting the UK's transition to a low carbon economy and becoming more efficient. And by doing all those things, the public debt will become more sustainable. Thank you for listening. It's a particularly long video, well done for making it towards the end. If you do have any comments, please feel free to engage and let us know. We'd be really interested. Thanks again. Bye bye.
See ya!